Hello traders, Rich here and welcome to Kucoin as episode 2, and today we are going to talk about support and resistance, how to identify the correct one, how to draw it, or even how to trade it. If you don't know about Kucoin, it's one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world with over 600 billion traded volume on the platform and 10 million registered users from more than 200 different countries. Kucoin has been rated the best crypto exchange by Forbes Advisor, and it's a top 3 in terms of overall performance according to Coinmarketcap. Kucoin has many features like margin trading, spot trading, trading bot, staking, mining pool, and many more with over 600 listed coins. If you don't have an account yet, I'll attach my referral link in the description below. And if you create an account through it, you will benefit from 20% discounts on your trading fees. So let's get started. And as usual, cheers. First of all, let's start with what is a support and resistance, and later on we'll get into many practical examples because you know me, I like practical learning. So a support area is when we have many failed attempts to break below a certain level or area. Vice versa, a resistance area is when we have many failed attempts to break above a certain area. Of course, until eventually the support is broken downward, it might become a potential resistance, and when a resistance is broken upward, it might become as a potential support. So how to draw it, how to treat it, and when to find the best support and resistance. As for my trading plan, I always look for my rejections, which is a support and resistance, supply and demand trend lines. But for this video, we're going to focus on support and resistance on higher time frames. For also know me, I call the daily and weekly our rejection time frames. And once like we find where we are in the market, then we zoom into lower time frames like H4, H1, and so on to look for setups. So it's very important to know where you currently are in the market. Are we bullish, bearish, around a support, a resistance? That's why it's very important to always start by drawing your support and resistance. It's like a floor, right? So we've got many floors, and this is our floor, this is our ceiling, right? So once we are inside this floor, so we'll be looking for sell around the upper band and buy around the lower band until eventually we break our ceiling, and now we are on our neighbor's floor, right? So this is our next floor because we are currently here, and we'll be looking for buy, looking for sell until, of course, breaking upward again, or we might also break below like the floor for our lower floor, right? So it's just like this. And but we have to identify where we currently are. So we have a ceiling here, maybe a floor here, a floor here, a ceiling here, right? So we are currently trading inside this area. Anyway, we'll get into it step by step on how to draw it. Okay, so long story short, I personally only look for support and resistance on higher time frames, weekly and daily, but you can apply the same logic on lower time frames. For example, for day traders, like we can draw the same support and resistance on H4 and then zoom into lower time frames for day trading to look for setups. But for this video, let's stick to the weekly and daily. I've got an example here and we'll draw it together. The way to do it is very simple. So you draw a line on your chart and drag and drop it in a way to connect as many swings as possible. Of course, we'll keep this one because it's the current all-time high, which is this entire zone from 68.5. You know what? Let's go for 70K because I always like to go for round numbers, and let's go for 65K. We've got a very strong rejection from this, and maybe we'll talk about round numbers and psychological levels in the next episodes, but let's keep this one so far. Even though it's not like the best support and resistance, it might be a resistance here, many rejections from it. Next, let's go for blue and go lower to find our next one. So we can't really find much here, right? Only a small rejection and a small rejection. So what we're looking at is a big swing rejecting this one upward or downward. That's why I call it a support and resistance. So we might have a swing high and a swing low. So like we don't only look for two rejections or two highs or only two lows. So we can look for a high and a low, two highs, one low, one high, right? So I always call it support and resistance. It's not only a support, not only a resistance, because of course, if it's just a resistance now, which I found, it might be broken downward, it might become a potential resistance. So next, let's go over and go lower Here we go. I can see many rejections from this area. If I go a little bit lower, I can also see many rejections here, right? So this is it, a support, many rejections here. And then, as mentioned previously, we've got a rejection here and a rejection here. That's why, if you noticed, I make it a little bit higher and lower, because our supply and resistance are always zones and not laser level. Like a mistake traders usually make is that they immediately wait for a break above a resistance, then they enter buy immediately. It's not the correct way, it's not the correct approach, at least in my opinion. So a resistance, once broken upward, we need an aggressive break above it from higher time frames. Then we zoom into lower time frames to look for buy on the retest. We'll take many examples in a bit. So we've got this one here, which is around 48K and 50K, right? Which is also a very strong round number. And we'll see in a bit that Bitcoin is respecting support and resistance in terms of 10K. I did this one, it's not like that strong. Of course, we might have one here, which is a minor one, around what? Around 60K, because it's like in terms of round numbers, 10K, and we've got the 55 around this area. Okay, but it's not as strong as the low one, which we just found. So let's keep our chart as clean as possible. Next, if you go a little bit lower, we can see that around the 40K, let me go for a horizontal one. Here we go. Around the 40K, we've got a very strong support and resistance also. Was acting as resistance previously, resistance as well, broken upward, now acting as support, right? And price is currently sitting around it. So we might have a rejection upward from here, unless this support is broken downward, it would become a resistance, and the movement to our next floor would be expected. Next, we can see many rejections from here, right? And it happens to be also that it's around the round number 30K. We've got a rejection, and price is currently sitting around the 40K. If broken downward, then a movement to the 30K would be expected. Of course, again and again, it's an entire zone just like this. So as price approaches it, it doesn't have to touch the exact 30K, and doesn't have like for it to be broken. Like one candle just breaking below a certain level is not enough. We need an aggressive break. Okay, so this is basically it. Look at how clean our chart becomes just by drawing a support and resistance. Now we know where we are in the market, right? So around a support area, looking for buy setups. For those who watched my previous analysis, of course, we can add more tools and confluences like a channel here and so on. But for this video, we'll focus only on support and resistance. And previously, price rejected our 48K, 50K support. Of course, I'll also add an offset for the low one around 38K, and I'll add one for this one, which is around 28K. So here we go. So now we can see it even better. I make this one really quick and clean. That's it. So now price is rejecting our 38, 40K support. Unless we have a break below it, it would also mean a break below these lows. Then price would break below the floor, and now which is the ceiling of our neighbor down there, right? In this case, it would become a ceiling here, and the next floor would be the 30. Okay, now how to approach it? Once you find your support and resistance from higher time frame, as mentioned previously, you can always zoom in to daily time frame to refine it, or to look for any support and resistance that wasn't visible from weekly time frame. We can see it even better here, resistance, support, and as you clearly notice, we've got like one candle close above, which is not enough, and we've got wicks here, which is not enough. We need a break, a full break above it, to confirm that now it's acting as support. As you can see here, only a couple of wicks, it's not confirmed to be broken yet. While here, we've got a full break, an aggressive one below this area. Of course, sometimes you might have fake outs that price fully break it and then reverse and trade higher. But like as long as you have an edge over the market, yeah, when you are winning more than when you are losing, you are doing fine. But like you can't really escape or avoid totally fake breakouts or losses. Okay, but our main job as traders is to like have an edge over the market and find a strategy that is proven to have an edge from a long-term perspective. And you can see many rejections from this area also, which is our support here, resistance here, resistance here, and so on. This is the channel that we mentioned from weekly time frame, but for now, like I'll not draw it. Let's focus on support and resistance. So this is basically it. And now, since we are around a support area, we are looking for basket ups. You can always zoom into lower time frames and wait for extra confirmation. For example, here, price rejected our resistance, broke through the previous low, broke it downward, retested, and traded lower. The exact same analysis can be applied here. Over to the previous high, the bullish trend started, and now we are following the exact same one. This is our last high. For the bulls to take over, we need to see a break above it, or of course, if price keeps on trading lower, then we'll adjust our last high, and so on. Of course, we'll go over like market structure and triggers and so on, hopefully in the next episodes. So that's it for Bitcoin. Let's go for our next example, which is one. Let's start from weekly. Now, like we'll get it a bit faster, but like to take my time on Bitcoin because it's the first example to show you a practical chart. Also on one, I don't really have any drawings here, so let's do it together. Just like Bitcoin, we have our all-time high around 4, so it's 0.4, so let's keep it, of course, and this one as well, so 37. Now, if you go lower, let's go for blue. And we can't really find many rejections here. Like, as you can see, price isn't respecting any. So if we go lower, can't really find much, only one candle, and like as you can see, not that strong. But if you go a little bit lower, we can see that we've got many rejections from this area. Resistance previously, support, then resistance here, which is around 0.23. So let's adjust it. Because I always like to see round number. I don't like to still see random numbers. And if you go a little bit lower also, we can find one around this area, which is also a very strong resistance, then support, support again and again until broken downward. Now it's acting as a resistance area. Now, if you go a little bit lower, like that's how straightforward it is. Just draw a line, drag and drop it, and connect like keep the ones with the most rejections or biggest rejections. So we need we don't really need like one drop like this. We need a full swing, as you can see, a full swing, right? A full swing. Okay. Next, we can go for this one, but like I'll just keep it because it's the 0.1, which is also a round number, psychological level, but it's not actually a very strong support and resistance. But like just to give you this example that one is approaching this area, which is also a demand area. We'll talk about supply and demand zones, hopefully in the next, not the next one, maybe the one after it. And so this is basically it. If you zoom into daily time frame, you can see it even better. Look at how clean the support and resistance is. Was acting as support here again and again, broken downward, resistance, rejected downward. Now it's approaching this support area. We can see that it's not like the strongest one, but we can see many rejections from it previously. Support here, resistance here, support here, and so on. So long story short, one is approaching a support area. So we'll be looking for basket ups until, of course, unless or eventually until broken downward, then it would be like act as previously broken downward, now acting as a resistance area. Just like this one was acting as support, it's broken downward, now acting as a resistance area, was acting as a resistance, broken upward, now acting as a support area again until broken downward. All right. Now broken downward, our next support is here, rejected it upward, and so on. That's very important to identify your key rejection levels to know where you are in the market, so then you can zoom into your time frames to look for setups. So we have a support area here, we could look for bus stops. We have a resistance area here, which we saw from daily, and then price formed a head and shoulders pattern, or like a double top, or like whatever as per your trading style, a trend line here, right? So we've got many confluences. Price broke the previous low, our trigger, and then traded lower. If I apply the same logic here, we've got our last high here. For the push to take over, we need to see a break above it. Meanwhile, we can still drop lower and lower and maybe form this swing high, then we'll adjust our last swing. Anyway, we will cover this in a bit. Let's focus on, like later on, let's focus on support and resistance. on KCS, right? Which is like basically Kucoin. So I also find a very interesting support and resistance here. If you zoom out to weekly time frame, you can see that we've got this around 15, 16. I've been watching this one for a while when price was around here. Price broke it upward, traded higher, then retested. Like I looked for buy stops around this area because it's a resistance, broken upward, now turned into a potential support, right? So which is a very strong one. Of course, we can add more confluences like a channel and so on, but I will not do it. I posted many analysis for KCS previously, so you can check it out, but look at how clean this one is as the intersection of the support and the lower trend line. So as price of anyway, yeah, I guess you can see my alert here. So if for some reason KCS drops lower, this one would be an interesting area to look for buy setups. Okay. So now let's keep it clean. Let's focus on support and resistance because sometimes I get overexcited. So like I'm trying my best to focus only on support and resistance. So now if you zoom into daily time frame, we can see that we've got many rejections from this area. We had a break above it, right? A little bit. But as mentioned previously, for the resistance to be broken, we need the full break. Many bullish candles breaking above it. So this is our support. As price approaches it, we'll be looking for buy setups, and or if price breaks above our resistance on the retest, we can look for buy setups, right? So now KCS is trading inside this floor, a resistance, a support. Let's see if price would break it upward to look for buy, or trade lower to look for buy around the lower bound. Of course, you can always zoom into lower time frames and look for extra confirmation. Price broke above the previous high here, trade it higher, over the previous low here, trade it lower, but let's focus on support and resistance. Okay, next we've got crypto.com. Also, we can see on weekly, you can't really find much. We can see that we've got one here, but let's see better from daily time frame. I always start from weekly. If I don't really see much, I zoom into daily, but these are our two rejection time frames, daily and weekly. So this is it, right? So a resistance here, broken upward, a support, and it's also a demand area as we had an aggressive movement upward from it. So look at how clean this one is, right? And of course, we can also find one here, the support previously, resistance, support, but let's focus on our current one. Now, if you zoom in a little bit, we can see that we've got one around this area also. Was acting as support previously, it was a demand, anyway, broken downward, now acting as a resistance and resistance again. So Crow is currently trading inside this floor, right? So let's make this one a little bit higher. Here we go. So like this is also an entire zone, just like the previous ones. Okay, so now this is our floor, trading inside it, our ceiling, our floor, as price approaches. Anyway, you can see my alert here. The support area will be looking for buy setups, and if broken upward, it would be a support. Our resistance will become a support again, and we're looking for buy on the retest. And of course, looking for buy here, unless it's broken downward, then it will become a resistance, and a movement lower would be expected. Okay, let's go for more examples on XRP. Let's get also 3 examples, but for now I have my drawings because we already went over many charts. On weekly time frame, on XRP, we can see these very strong support and resistance areas, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. So it was a demand turned into a support, many rejections from it here and here and here. Next, we've got our 0.5, 0.6. Of course, as usual, it's an entire zone. So like one candle only is not enough to confirm a break above or below a support or resistance. So now we've got our support here, right? Broken downward, turn to a resistance, resistance again, and a resistance. Broken upward, turn to support and support, right? And vice versa. For the 1, 0.9, it's a resistance, again, broken upward, support, resistance, support, and resistance. Like, look at how clean the 0.1, anyway, the 0.5, also 0.6 zone. Resistance, resistance, broken upward, then rejected again as a support. It's a perfect example of a potential resistance becoming a support and vice versa. Here you've got a support, Look at how clean it is. Broken downward, now acting as a resistance. Price rejected the lower support, traded higher, broke above the next resistance, and then it's now acting as support, rejected upward, then price broke below the support again. It's now acting as a resistance, traded lower, rejected the resistance, rejected the support here. So like that's how straightforward it is. Of course, for weekly time frame, we'll be looking for sell here, we'll be looking for buy here, and so on. Let's focus on the current price action. If you zoom into daily time frame, you can see it even better. Support, resistance, support, and so on. So now XRP is trading inside this floor. So as price approaches our support area, we'll be looking for buy setups. Of course, unless broken upward, this resistance, and it will become a support, just like previously here when it was broken upward. Okay, fantastic. Of course, as price approaches the support, we zoom into lower time frames. Why? Because price can still break the support downward, right? So like these are not foolproof, they are not bulletproof, if you want, as a funny way. Okay, so like they are not foolproof. So price can still trade lower, reject it upward, or can still trade lower, some second consolidation, and then breaks it downward to test the lower support. Just like here, we were looking for buy stops around a support area because price can still break it down for it to become a resistance and trade lower. Around this area, we were looking for buy stops because price can still trade lower and break it down. In this case, price formed a consolidation here. We can see it anyway from daily time. From here we go, right? So I don't know why I still have my drawings, but you've got the idea, right? So that's it. Let's go for one more. Like if you want, let's go for two more. Okay. On that, okay, we've got our channel trend lines here. I don't want it. Here we go. So look at how clean this one is. Also from the time frame, this one like is like you can't really see like as clean as this much, right? So like a perfect example of a perfect range. So upper bound, resistance, lower bound, support multiple times. Then price broke it upward, it became a support, rejected it once, and like price didn't retest it yet. So now on that, it's approaching the support area. Of course, it's an entire area. So starting from here, we'll be looking for buy setups. And on the upper bound is this resistance, turned support, sorry, this support, turned resistance, turned support again, and then price broke it downward, it's turned into a resistance area. Okay, so on that, on basic, here we go. So now, and like if you remember, like we had a head and shoulders example last week, right? If you remember on that, which were these ones. So if you check out these ones, we are still waiting for the head and shoulders pattern to form on 1 inch, on ICP, on ADA, right? So I guess you remember the last episode, which is the inverse, head and shoulders in general, but it was inverse because we are looking for buy setups. So like BAT and algo, we had many examples on algo, head and shoulders, inverse head and shoulders, and so on. Okay, so on BAT, this was also an example from last week. So from daily time frame, we have an inverse head and shoulders pattern. The neckline happens to be the same as our resistance area, which we saw from weekly time frame. Support, resistance, support, resistance. So once broken upward, right, it would be an extra confirmation that we also got a very big pattern. So by breaking above the neckline, it would also break above the next resistance, the next resistance area. Of course, as price retest, if price trades lower for some reasons, then we'll be looking for buy setups here on lower time frames, also on H4 or H1 or whatever your trading plan is, as we have a very strong support around this area. And of course, from a short-term perspective, it's broken upward, then this would become a support, and we'll be looking for buy setups on lower time frames. Let's go for one last example, which is algo. We also had an example about this one last week for head and shoulders. If you zoom in, we can see that we've got a resistance here, resistance again, broken upward. It's now acting as support, and price is currently retesting the support. Of course, it's an entire zone, not a daisy level, so we should treat it like this. So for the bears to break it down, we need to see a break below 0.7. We can still have wicks, just like these ones, right? So we can still trade a little bit lower before trading higher. Unless it's broken downward with many big bearish candles, then it would be confirmed to be broken and now acting as a resistance. But for now, technically, it's still acting as support. Okay. So if we zoom into daily time frame, anyway, let's delete our channel for now. This one, here we go. So we're looking for buy stops on lower time frames now to catch the next impulse movement upward, just like we did previously. A resistance here, a support here, looking for buy stops, looking for sell setups. Now we're looking for what? For buy setups, which would be a break above this area. We might have a double bottom, an inverse challenge shortest pattern, just like this one, maybe a channel, right? So we can't really know because price is still forming. It's like we can still see many patterns. But for now, as for market structure, we'll also cover it in the next episodes. Like this is our last major high from H4 for the bulls to take over. We need to see a break above this area here. Why? While looking for buy in the first place, which is a practical example, we want a rejection area. Then we zoom into lower time frames for extra confirmation. A rejection area 0.7 proven to be a very strong support previously, resistance, support, and so on. That's why we are looking for buy stops. We zoom into lower time frames, and here we go. This is it for extra confirmation, just like we did previously. Next, we've got this one here, which is a support and resistance. As you can see, like price is very choppy here, but we can see it even better from weekly time frame. So here we go, resistance here, broken upward, support here, and then broken downward, resistance again. And we've got the one support, resistance, and it's currently acting as resistance. So from a long-term perspective, for algo or for the bulls to take over on algo, we need to see this break. Anyway, we can see it very clearly from daily. We've got a flat range around this area. So long story short, for algo, since it's the last one, I'm taking my time. So looking for buy stops on lower time frames for the bulls to take over from a long-term perspective, we need to see a break above this area. Then we'll be looking for buy stops on the retest. Okay, so that's it for this video, for this episode about supply and resistance. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to cover a specific topic for episode 3. Best of luck, and I'll see you on the next one.